Hello and salutations, my fellow philosophers. Welcome back to the Philos-Hippie podcast, in which we explore the intersection of philosophy and spirituality, and how we can live more holistic and meaningful secular lives. So I wanted to expand upon my previous spiritual exercises episode and talk about how, you can have a more practical example in real life, and for me, I chose skiing in that regard. Like I mentioned in my spiritual exercises crash course episode, I talked about how spiritual exercises can take shape in a plethora of forms in our lives. And here's a quick refresher as to what spiritual exercises are. They are philosophical practices designed to transform the self, modifying one's inner life, perception, and conduct in order to achieve wisdom, freedom, and a more universal viewpoint. Whether it be meditation, philosophical contemplation, volunteering, traveling, it can be anything that trains your mind to let go of its current habitual patterns and allows you to open yourself up to a new mode of relating to existence. But in that episode, I made reference that you can do the same with skiing, and I would love to explain to you how. At my current phase of my nomadic journey, I am working and living in the heart of the Rocky Mountains, and I have been blessed with the amazing opportunity to hit the ski slopes every weekend, essentially for free with my workers' benefits. And with this being my first year skiing consistently, it has given my mind lots to reflect upon. In my current white boy winter era, skiing has become the spiritual exercise I regularly practice during my time living here in the Rockies. You may be skeptical, though, as to how one of the most commercialized sports on the planet can possibly become a source of spiritual inspiration and practice. Well, all I have to offer is my own experience and testimony, so you'll have to be the judge for yourself. But for me, skiing is a spiritual exercise for me because at its core, it helps me to train my conscious awareness in a rather unique way. The same could also be said with skating and surfing because they all function in the same flow-inducing way. I just decided to write about skiing because that's closest to my personal experience right now at this moment in my life, so yeah. But anyways, I am no skiing expert by any means. But the handful of times I've hit the slopes, I always leave feeling such a profound sense of clear-headedness and calm. This is because skiing is one of the easiest ways to tap into a flow state, wherein I lose all sense of self and all my conscious attention is put into the present task at hand. Which, to be frank, is to fucking survive and not hit a tree or a lone bystander half the time. If you want to learn more about what a flow state is like phenomenologically and how it can help us to live more eudaimonic lives, make sure to check out one of my first episodes of the Philos-Hippie podcast. But anyways, tapping into a flow state like this is nothing short but exhilarating, but it can also be intensely spiritual because all the mental clutter and distractions in your mind fade away as you feel fully embodied into the present moment. By fusing your conscious awareness with the present, your body's inhabiting a radical new type of knowing through the function of movement that phenomenologists like Maurice Merleau-Ponty wrote about. One of his most central ideas lies in the idea that, quote, the body is our general medium for having a world, end quote. Being spiritual does not always mean you dissolve and forego all bodily senses in order to attain mental perfection, but it could also mean that your body is the temple you worship, by giving it the opportunity to experience the world in all its novelty. Merleau-Ponty writes that, quote, we know not through our intellect, but through our experience, end quote. Skiing, for me, allows me to tap into my body in a profound and novel way because it forces me to forego my awareness of mental abstractions and allows me to experience the world in its pure and untainted manner. It's very reminiscent of the Zen idea no mind, where all sense of self and identity disappears as one comes into deeper contact with reality. Okay, all this talk of tapping into flow states and experiencing a deeper layer of the world through our immediate bodily senses is great, but you may be asking yourself, doesn't a spiritual exercise have to also, fundamentally change you as a person and your perspective of the world? And you couldn't be more right, dear viewer. Look at you using your skeptical goggles. I'm so proud of you, my fellow philosopher. But anyways, skiing can be a profound tool for changing the way in which you relate to nature and your surrounding environment. It is inherently a simultaneously empowering yet humbling experience. For millennia, the mountain was a symbol of foreboding danger, indifferent as to whether or not those who dared to trek its steps perished or not. But humanity, in all its ingenuity and perhaps even arrogance, resolved to conquer our fear of it. However, we did not set out to conquer the mountain itself because even our hubris we can realize our own limits. To ski down a mountain is to rise ourselves up to the dizzying heights of the mountain itself, and dare ourselves to ski down in ecstasy and rapture, while still adhering to the threats the mountain naturally imposes onto us, which makes us realize how small and insignificant we are in comparison. Skiing, in its purest essence, fundamentally transforms our relationship to fear and how we handle it. When you shred the slopes, you're also shredding away at the boundaries of your comfort zone. Philip Ebert, a senior lecturer in philosophy at the University of Stirling, Scotland, frequently goes skiing throughout Europe, and for him, it's become the way he taps into a higher mode of being and expands his sense of what he is capable of. It creates a profound personological transformation in him. In his short film, Comfort Zones, he says that, quote, "It's not as if I felt that I've become more and more risk-seeking, quite the opposite. I feel like my comfort zone has become wider and wider and wider. And I've started to feel more comfortable in this kind of unknown terrain, such that I can take certain risks that for other people might seem exceptionally risky." End quote. Through repeatedly exposing himself to the elements and skiing along the edge of his talents, his capacity for living on the edge only increases. This helps to bolster one's sense of confidence, empowering one to navigate the world in any type of unknown terrain. And of course, as with any spiritual exercise, the skills you require from it are not meant to only be lived on the meditation cushion or the ski slopes, but in everyday life and the way you carry yourself in the world. So, when we zoom out, skiing stops being just a hobby, a sport, or a flashy winter pastime, and instead starts to look a lot like a lived philosophy. It becomes a spiritual exercise not because it promises enlightenment at the bottom of the run, but because it quietly reshapes how we inhabit our bodies, how we relate to fear, and how we meet the present moment as it comes rushing towards us. What skiing has taught me in this season of my life is that wisdom doesn't always have to arrive through stillness. Sometimes it arrives at 30 miles per hour, knees bent, heart pounding, fully awake and fully alive. And in that sense, the mountain becomes the teacher, the body, the classroom, and attention becomes the lesson. Now, thank you once again for checking out this episode of the Philos-Hippie podcast. I hope you found it enlightening and that you'll join me next week for a longer episode as we dive into the topic of how we can properly cultivate the intellect in the 21st century. In the meantime, I wish you metta and wisdom. Peace.